It's interesting that when I was your age, I had a huge chance of my life to become the youngest ambassador of Romania to the United States. And of course, in those days, we are so much interested in joining NATO, then joining European Union. And I made that journey of Romania and our part of Europe that was left in the dark side of communism, the return to our family of democratic free nations of the West. And this is something that, in a funny way, struggling to convince the Americans and then the Europeans to allow a country like Romania, with not a great reputation at that time, to be part of this successful alliance was something that I've done all my life. Together with a very good friend from Cluj, Vasile Pușcaș, we closed the negotiations for joining the EU when I was foreign minister. But it's something in life, and that's something I want to talk to you about. And in the life not only of individuals, but of societies, of nations, and of innovators. So 5 years ago, when I was hired to be number 2 at NATO, our Secretary General, Jens Stoltenberg, he's Norwegian. He's very structured, a good friend. And he gave me something, a sort of a written piece of a letter, say, that's what I expect from you to do. This. But then he told me orally, Mircea, I looked into your CV and I remember that I've seen that you've been an engineer in your very young years. Yes, sir. I used to be one. Not a very good one, but nonetheless, I was an engineer. I want you to become the champion of innovation in NATO. And these 5 years when we had war in Ukraine, withdrawal from Afghanistan, the rise of China, Gaza, tensions, problems, security challenges, I would say that the fact that I'm leading innovation, I'm chairing the innovation board in NATO, was probably the most interesting, exciting, transformative experience of my lifetime. Because what I wanted to leave with you this morning is that today the world is transforming like never ever before in human history. Because we had great power competition before. Roman Empire, British Empire, the Dutch Empire, the inventors of capitalism and technology and innovation. But we never ever had before, at the same time, huge, intense geopolitical competition between America, Europe, NATO, and our allies, China, Russia, North Korea, Iran, and others on the other side. There is a huge, highly turbocharged global competition. But in history, we've seen this kind of things before. It's not the first time that great powers compete for supremacy. There's nothing new under the sun. What's really adding to this fierce global competition, so geopolitics if you want, is an immense era of revolutions, the plural, in technology. Fareed Zakaria, you see him on CNN, a super smart guy, just wrote a book that I'm reading now that is called The Age of Revolutions. Not revolution, because we live revolutionary times, but revolutions. So not only geopolitics are back to the front stage here, but also geoeconomics, the competition for economy, for the model of economy, is also here. And security is becoming ubiquitous. Security is not only armed forces and intelligence and NATO. Security is everything we do. Cybersecurity, climate change and security, outer space and security, hybrid warfare and security. Everything today, there is a continuum between politics, geopolitics, and geoeconomics. So if you put, the logo of NATO, this compass, if you look here, I will put, let's say, to the west, security. On the eastern side, economy. On the northern part, technology. And here on the southern part, society. Because between economy and security, technology and society, there is an immense transformation going on as we speak. And this is spurred by the technological revolutions that they're witnessing. In NATO, everything we do and everything I do together with my colleagues is to see how ubiquitous the same algorithm can be used for immense, in AI, generative AI, in biotech, in everything else, can be used for immense progress, for huge transformation of life sciences, of healthcare, of education, of innovation, of things that are beautiful in life. The same algorithm, the same one, can be used, switched to the other side, and could become a huge problem for nuclear proliferation, for everything that is basically affecting the life and security of our citizens, of our societies, and of our nations. Of course, lots of people look into AI. And we have in NATO, I think, the third revision of the AI strategy for NATO. And we are very keen, especially for you, professionals and young people, to make sure that when it comes to national defense and security, we attach to the AI strategy in defense principles of ethical use. Ethical use. Every single piece of strategy we have on biotech, on new materials, on human enhancement, on exoskeletons, in colonizing outer space, we try to have an ethical use because our adversaries don't have that problem. They're not democracies, so they don't have this problem. So we try to make principled use, ethical use of these technologies a norm. And we want to be, as NATO, the golden standard of these things. There is also something that people are not paying attention because it's not always in the headlines. Of course, NVIDIA today, speaking of AI, is the highest valuation in the world as a company. It's normal because AI is hyper turbocharging everything else. But I would like to ask for you to pay attention to the other revolutions in technology that are happening with a speed that has never happened before in human history. And they are coexisting and influencing each other and hyper turbocharging everything else. Biotechnology. If you look to the venture capital markets in America, unfortunately only America and the UK, not that many of European nations, including in our part of Europe, we don't have a depth of venture capital and financial markets to spur this innovation. We have to do something about that. But in the US, if you look to the money going into biotech versus IT, I think, and we have here professionals, I think that there is money going into biotech and synthetic biology more than in IT. People speak of the Silicon Valley. Of course, we all know Silicon Valley. People speak in Canada of the Toronto, Waterloo corridor. People know about the Boston area biotech ecosystem. But not that people know that in San Diego, there is basically a bay, not a valley, a bay in San Diego, where the most significant number of startups and biotech are nurtured, and then Boston and then the others are picking up this talent. And why I say San Diego with a sense of respect, because the first Nobel Prize from Romania, George Emil Palade, the founder of biotechnology, after he left Romania for America, he finished his work in San Diego. So I'm just saying that biotechnology and synthetic biology are immensely transformative. Soon enough, very soon, we'll be able to basically recover limbs from amputated arms and legs of human beings. Speaking of CO2 emissions of agriculture, from everything we do with synthetic biology, we'll be reducing by 80% the CO2 emission of our zootechnic sector. New materials. For the first time in history, my friends, we are very close. This will happen in this decade. To invent materials outside of the Mendeleev table. Think a little bit of that. For the first time, we'll be able to replace and produce new materials that are not part of the Mendeleev table, so what nature has offered to us as human beings on this planet. Imagine the transformation of this thing would bring. We are very close, and the prototypes are already out there of new forms of energy. Not only energy propulsion for my needs in NATO, but energy manufacturing and distribution. This will be a huge revolution when it comes to the artery of our economies and societies, which is energy. As we speak, there is not only a competition in outer space, and we see Russia and others becoming very dangerous from outer space to our interest and our security, but in fact we are witnessing, and you'll be part, my young friends, of the race for colonization of outer space, not only of exploration of outer space. Human enhancement, and I can go on and on and on. What I'm telling you, that this era of revolutions is also changing the economic model that we work in, and I'm happy to see many startups here, many more mature companies here in Techsylvania, because you'll be transforming our economic model. More efficient, more productive, more competitive, more streamlined. But there is also something that I want you to pay attention to. Because if we look into the history books, to the previous industrial revolutions, there is also a risk, speaking of technology and society this time, that many people, if we don't give them right education, and upskilling and reskilling and upskilling and reskilling over and over again, along the life cycle of our citizens, not in tech, in everything else, then we might be finding a situation to have so much inequity in our societies, so much polarization of wealth, so much difference between the citizens that, like you, are empowered and know the game and benefit from the game, and the mass of the others who are left behind. So what the Luddites done in England, in the first industrial revolution, destroying the machines and the steam machines, will be probably, if we don't do something about empowering also the rest of society. Not to keep you down, to slow you down. This is not the idea. Not to slow you down, to empower you, but to making sure that the rest of society can benefit and grasp and cope with such a huge transformation. Because our societies are changing. The values in our societies are changing. The anxiety of the people living in our societies is getting more intense. So speaking of security, economy, technology, and society, there is basically a totally new world which is now shaping itself as we speak. The speed, the density, the intensity, the transformative nature of this era is unprecedented in human history. Never ever before we had, in a very dense, short period of time, so much revolutions at the same time. Coping with that is making even the most performant governments in the West, in the democratic West, and thanks God that we are in NATO and the EU. Thanks God we are there. I don't want to think what would have happened to countries like ours, seeing a little bit further to the east what's going on, the risk in the Middle East, the risk in the Indo-Pacific. Thanks God we are here. But at the same time, we have to be aware that this transformative era is also changing psychology of people, relationships between people in our societies, and not even the best performing governments in the West are not able to cope with the speed and complexity of such transformation. So the distance between the people, the citizens, and their governments will become very tense. Because in such transformative times, not even the best governments can really cope with so much change at the same time. How to regulate AI, how to make sure that there is robotics and labor force can cope with each other. And when I'm thinking of places where governments and politics are not great, or mediocre, or worse, the problem will become probably even more explosive and dangerous. And this is my last point for you. Of course, there was a lot of thinking, ideological, political, and professional thinking, that we can work in bubbles. That the guys from finance, they always make money, and they have their bubble. And then you have the tech bubble. And then you have the energy bubble. And then you have whatever else, innovators bubble. And then you have the politicians. And then you have the trade unions. And then you have corporate bubbles. That era is over. Because if we'll not be able, in our democratic societies, in such transformative, complicated times, with anxiety, with opportunity, with risk from coming from all over the place, to work between the public sector, the private sector, and civil society and academia as one, would not be able to cope. And the illusion that businesses and innovation and tech can live without government is over. In my line of work, in the 60s, 90% of every single technology used for national security was produced by government innovation. By NASA, by DARPA, by the Department of Energy, and the labs. Today, as we speak, 90%, the same 90%, that everything we use in national defense and security, including in NATO, is produced by the private sector. So it's funny in a way to see the Silicon Valley is going on Capitol Hill asking to be regulated. Because even the ones spurring such huge transformation, they, like AI and other things, they say, this is becoming too complicated. We need some guardrails. And a commercial about NATO, if you allow me. One of the problems we had in a big organization like ours was the fact that we were slow. Governments are slow, big organizations are slow, very professional, top-notch, top professionals, really top professionals. But the nature is bureaucratic. So the job I received from Jens Stoltenberg, be the champion of innovation for me, in an era of hyper-competition, was how to maintain the technological edge of the political West. Because if we are losing the edge, and in some places we start to lose the edge with China mainly, then the beginning of a sharp decline for us will start. Whoever controls technology and innovation or dominates that thing will be doing okay in economy, in GDPs, in militaries, in intelligence, in everything you want, in quality of life for our citizens. So my job was, and is, to make sure that we harness the immense ecosystem of innovation all over NATO. Not only in Silicon Valley, or in San Diego, or in Boston, or in London, or in Frankfurt, or Munich. Frankfurt I like because yesterday we qualified. Thanks God, this is really great. I like Frankfurt even more. But in fact, there is so much talent. In Albania, in Romania, in Bulgaria, in Poland, in Hungary, in the Netherlands, in Belgium, where we live for the last 5 years. There's so much talent. There's so many startups. There's so many bright people. There's so many bright ideas, but there is a difficulty to harness this thing. Universities. You have very good universities here in Cluj. I'm very happy that I've seen Lockheed Martin congregating with the Technical University of Cluj for AI and many other things that are happening, but there is not enough money. And if you want to have a startup, before you get to fruition with your idea and also to pocket the money that you deserve, you and your colleagues deserve, you have to basically sell equity to whatever intermediate fund that is able to fund your thing. So what did we do in NATO? And I'm very proud of this. we created the first in the world multinational sovereign venture capital fund. The first venture capital fund that is owned by nations, by NATO countries. It's called the NATO Innovation Fund. It's based in Amsterdam. It's totally independent from us. They're top venture capitalists that are running the show, and they are starting to disburse money for startups with dual-use technologies, ubiquitous technologies that can be used for civilian purposes, but also for national security and defense purposes. I encourage you to look it up. I think they just invested in a small fund, a deep tech dual-use fund in Poland and in other places. We also signed an agreement a few weeks ago with the European Investment Fund. I've seen the EU Innovation Council here with the display. So we can, NATO and EU, we can fund together and to be anchors in private equity or venture capital funds for innovation on dual-use technologies. We've done also something else that I'm very proud of. We called on all nations, 32 nations, with Sweden and Finland now new members of NATO, more than 100 test centers and accelerators all over NATO that are offered to you, young innovators. You want to test an idea on quantum? You can go to Copenhagen to the Niels Bohr Institute, which is one of the best in Europe. You want to do something on generative AI? You can go to the US, you can go to London, you can go to Germany, you can go wherever, and test for free your ideas. So the NATO Innovation Fund and Diana are basically helping you cross the valley of death and making sure that you mature your ideas and your businesses. And then at the end, hopefully you'll become unicorns and not allow your talent to be hijacked too early and go to the real markets and make the real big buck. And when I said the NATO innovation ecosystem, this is why I'm here in Cluj at Techsylvania today. It's not about Cluj or Romania or Transylvania, it's about our region. There is so much talent in our region. There's so much talent in Ukraine, by the way. I'm amazed with the speed of transformation, innovation that they are forced by this bloody war to do. You know how much time it takes for an Ukrainian startup with a dual-use technology idea to get an answer and some money from the innovation ministry in Kiev? 30 days. Yes or no? The transformation on the battlefield with drones and everything else is making the cycle of innovation in the battlefield in Ukraine of roughly 3 months. You come with something, the other guys found something against it, electronic warfare, jamming, whatever, and after 3 months you have to come with something even smarter. The speed of adaptation and the huge experiment that this war represents, other than its barbaric nature and immense loss of lives and property, is that we are accelerating innovation also in our line of work. So the commercial about NATO is that look at us not only as a huge and solid provider of security. You can do your business in peace and tranquility because we are in NATO. You can start a life, a family, a business, a journey, an introspection, whatever you want to do, in peace and tranquility because we are in NATO. But I want you to think as NATO also as a champion of innovation. And a huge player, 1 billion people, 53% of global GDP are in NATO nations as we speak. So here in Cluj, like Techsylvania, the 11th edition, I'm just telling you that this part of Europe, this part of NATO, this part of EU, if we do the right things, if we have this combination between public sector, governments, private sector, and academia, and we bring our talent together, and we give a little bit of resources, and have more transparency and less corruption in public life, and more efficient governments, a little bit, this region of ours, to my understanding, will become the real dynamos of the West. And I think in the next few years, like Poland or Romania and the others, if we do the right things, we'll be able to really catch up with the developed economies in the West. There is a big election coming in the UK on 4th of July. They chose the National Day of America to organize elections. And I was watching yesterday Rishi Sunak and Keir Starmer debating. I'm still interested in this kind of things. And Starmer and the Labour said, if we don't do something, in the next 10 years, Poland will become richer per capita and adjusted with purchasing parity power than the UK. And he said in 2040, Romania might overtake UK. Sounds far-fetched? No. Could fail? Yes. Could be immensely successful? Yes, yes, yes. So, remember this quadrant of economy, security, technology, and society. And you, my dear friends, my young friends, you are basically the spearhead of a new balance in our societies, in our economies, in our security, and in the world. You are the ones who are transforming this planet and these societies like never ever before. You also bear the responsibility on your shoulders, not only to be successful and smart with your businesses, but also to become responsible and understanding the implications and the ethical part and the societal implications of what you do. I'm so proud to be here in Cluj again. It's a beautiful place. I'm so happy that I could come. Probably in the next period of time, after 5 years at NATO, probably there is time to think of the next chapter of my life. But running innovation in NATO has been the highlight, I would say, of my whole career. And nothing more makes me more proud and happy than to be with people like you. I feel your energy, I feel your smart minds. I hear your minds ticking now. How can I apply for the NATO Innovation Fund? Okay, on that optimistic note, thank you so much. It's a privilege to be with you. Felicitări celor care organizează Techsylvania.
Mulțumesc, Mircea. Thank you so much. I really appreciate the pro-innovation approach and mindset. And I also want to correct, like Vlad told me that I kind of messed up your last name. So I said Joanna is the right pronunciation, because I don't want to land on a NATO wanted list.
We'll give you a large language model to pronounce correctly my name.
I'm still practicing. After living 5 years in Cluj, my Romanian still sucks, but I'll be...
Mircea Joanna.
Mircea Joanna. Okay.
Good. We made it. It's good.
Putem. Sigur, Mircea. Merci.
Thank you.
All right. So we have a few questions. We have like maybe time for 3-4 questions. Vlad has the honor to ask the first question because he was very burning. So please, otherwise, raise your hands if you have a question. We have only time for 3-4, but let's make sure that we get a bunch of good questions in. Vlad, please go ahead.
First of all, thank you so much for joining us, Mr. John. It's an honor. My question is, you've been Romania's ambassador to the United States, and you saw how a thriving ecosystem and economy looks like. If you were to import one thing from the US business mindset into Romania, what would that be?
You know, I will disappoint you. I believe in innovation. And there is a big economic theory. It's called dynamic capability economic growth theory that was invented by Lord Sainsbury. You know the Sainsbury shops in the UK? That's him. Chancellor of Cambridge, that's him. And former Minister of Innovation in the British government, it's him. And basically, he argues that innovation is not only a technological innovation in terms of science and applied sciences and tech, but innovation is a mindset, a cultural trait that make nations be successful or not. So when I hear about imitating things, I have a sort of reservation. Because you cannot replicate Silicon Valley. They tried it in everywhere. Even the UK tried. It doesn't work. Why? Because it's unique. So I think the real question is, how can I make sure that we in realistic terms and ambitious terms, how can I find my strength and for myself to be the innovator and not the imitator? If I will do something, speaking of the US, and the huge Romanian diaspora, including scientific, business people, smart guys, men and women, everywhere, I will really try to reconnect them to their home country. Not to eventually, if they want to return, God bless their soul. But if they don't, just recoupling them, this will also be a huge investment in fresh ideas, eventually money. And I'm very happy here in Cluj, when I met the rector of the medical university here, Mrs. Buzoianu, she asked me if we can help with a biotech curricula for our medical universities. But speaking of the US, there is something that I think we should all keep in mind. There is a very clear and clear defined role of the government. And I think what Romania and our part of the world and our part of the European Union is to make sure that we find the right balance between the role of the government that should be more agile. And I think this is where I believe we can learn something from the Americans. Let the private sector, let the innovators create financial conditions for things to happen. But America is an experiment that cannot be replicated. And I think that in Romania, in Poland, in the Czech Republic, or we play Slovakia yesterday, in Slovakia, I think we can also find nuggets and also make sure that we create the right ecosystem between the big international companies here. You know, I visited in Iași, Amazon. They have 5,000. Here, the Accenture, they have 5,000 engineers. Oracle has the third largest office in the world in Romania. So the idea is, of course, welcome these big companies. That's because they are essential. But how can I also create more of my own successful businesses? And I think this is what we can learn from America. The sky is the limit. And you can be in Romania, you can be in Poland, you can be in the Czech Republic. The sky is the limit when it comes to innovation and becoming successful. So that's what I learned from America, the spirit of innovation and the role of government that is not stifling innovation, but is encouraging innovation.
I love that. We're waiting for the first Romanian trillion-dollar company when the sky is the limit.
Here it comes.
All right. I think we have
I smell it. It's here, in this room.
Hello, Mr. John, and thanks a lot for your valuable insights. It was really visual for us. Let's play a game. Let's suppose we are a company, because we are here for business matters, innovators, technology industry. And let's suppose we have a board meeting, and you are a board member. Please tell us top 5, but be tough. Top 5. Stop doing this to be more competitive and to be strong for the future. And top 5, improve this.
Come on, I cannot give advice for free. I mean, I give you...
You are a board member.
I'm a board member, okay. Come on. Life is tough, you know.
I know.
Yeah. Listen, I cannot give advice because there is no one size fits all. It doesn't work. There's one situation in one type of company, there's a different situation in a different one. But if I will say something to tech and innovation startups coming from our region, is to try to hang to the business as much as you can and don't sell too early equity in your company if you really believe that your idea can really become highly successful. If it's not 1 trillion, at least to go in the hundreds of millions. So the first advice I would go, don't go and sell too quick. And therefore that we need to provide, let's say, more venture capital also from here. Israel is an example of how they do this. There are other countries that do this. Romania, unfortunately, is very unsophisticated when it comes to the financial instruments that are at disposal of you. So first, don't sell fast. Secondly, I think, go international as fast as possible. Of course, it's good to be in Cluj, in Brașov, in Bucharest, in Iași, wherever, but try to find, at least in the region, for you, as a Cluj-based or Romania-based tech company, try to find yourself and try to purchase a small, interesting company in the region, at least at the beginning. Go international fast. So keep to the money as much as you can, put the equity to make sure that you do your thing, and become international faster. That would be my second advice. Why? Because when you go to the real deal and the real valuation and the real investors and the real anchors into your thing, you'll be not only a Romanian-based, you also have a regional, at least an international dimension to your thing. And thirdly, 5 I don't know, but the third, what I would say, try to get, let's say, multinational and multicultural people on your team. Innovation doesn't happen only with technologists. It happens also with artists. It happens with musicians. It happens with many other things, with financiers that are different mindset. So from the beginning, you see this very successful thing, there is a guy that knows the marketing, a guy with the PR, a guy with tech, and the guy with the money. That usually you see the huge successful companies, that the composition is diverse. Don't try to be only among engineers. Used to be an engineer. Try to diversify your team from the beginning, because the sophistication will come with that. Fresh ideas will come with that. So these will be 3 things. Don't sell quick. Go international fast. And try to be as diverse in gender, in everything you want in your companies, because at that time you'll become so much more successful, so much more sophisticated, and so much more closer to the 1 trillion target that I established for you now from the stage.
I love that we set $1 trillion target for Romania a year. Very good. And for the final 2 additional advices, you need to pay consult like after that.
No. It's free of charge. Free of charge.
Anyway, one final quick question, and then we need to move on. I think there was a question here.
Thank
Please.
you, Mr. Jana. You were talking about your next chapter of your life. Does that include a run for the Romanian presidential elections?
Next question, please. Thank you, guys. Mulțumesc foarte mult. A fost o mare
Thank you so much, Mircea.